Hi there, everyone. My name is Laura Kathrein. I am a Boston-based movement artist and the dancer behind I Am Body, now at the Peabody Essex Museum's Art and Nature Center pod. Today, I'm going to be guiding us through something that I like to call an environmental improv. I'll be demonstrating this both on my feet, standing, as well as seated, as you can do this whole workshop from a seated position, just using the gestures in your upper body, your breath, your gaze, your head. So let's go ahead and get started. So go ahead and find a comfortable standing or seated position where you can feel the feet firmly planted on the earth, drawing the energy up through the feet and out the crown of the head. Shift the awareness to the breath and the natural quality of the breath. Notice the depth, the length, where in the body you feel the breath. And perhaps you begin to use that breath to guide your awareness to the external world, activating the senses within the body. From here, we're going to identify a perch. And I'm using this perch as a home base. So just like a bird might fly around from branch to branch, it can always land on its perch and rest. And this perch is just a place we can draw our awareness back to throughout this entire workshop. At times I'll guide us to the perch, but perhaps you begin to get tired in the workshop or overwhelmed, and that's okay. Come back to that perch. So your perch can be your breath, your perch can be a sound, it can be a smell, it can be a certain positioning of the body. Let that perch serve as a place that means rest to you. So after you've identified that perch, begin to notice the weight of the body. Maybe start to sway, either seated or standing on the feet or the sits bones. How is the body feeling today? What descriptive words might you assign? And just noticing the range of motion just by simply shifting the weight on the feet or the tailbone. Notice the connection of the tailbone to the heel. So if you're standing, maybe you start to lift the feet or march in place. You can do this seated as well. And just notice what happens when you're focusing on the connection between the tail and the heel. What is your range of motion between these two parts of the body? When the heel lifts, what does the tailbone do? If the tailbone were to rock forward, how does that shift the weight in the heels and the feet? And start to take up more space exploring this connection from tailbone to heel. Maybe those movements become bigger, faster, dramatic. Or maybe you're still just playing with the weight in the body. But wherever you are, shift your awareness now from the connection of the tailbone to the crown of the head. So when my tailbone tucks, how does that chain reaction move up the spine to the crown of the head? Or if I stick my tailbone behind me, how does that ripple up through to the crown of the head? And then from the head to the tail. Maybe play with each guiding a movement. And just like there's a piece of string, notice how the other part of the body responds. Maybe playing with the flexing and the rounding of the spine, especially if you're seated. Explore the different ways that torso moves when thinking there's a string attached between the head and tail. And letting that go, we'll move to the connection between the scapula and arm. So our arms don't begin at our shoulders. Our wings begin in our upper back and our scapula. So play with initiating movement in the arms from the back body, from the scapula. Or if you initiate movement in the hands or arms, how can you feel that movement ripple into the scapula? When one moves, the other moves. Maybe this is a swing of the arms. Maybe you let that swing grow really big and dynamic. Or just maybe you're getting curious about the various ways in which the arm can move in relation to the scapula. All of these connections we're reviewing can be utilized as we move into the elemental improv. We're just awakening various parts of the body and understanding the energetic connection between all. So start to let your scapula arm movements slow and begin to come back to your perch. Come back to neutral. Maybe you're just standing or seated still. Maybe you're just gently, neutrally walking. But wherever you are, come back to that perch, whatever you've chosen. And we'll begin our elemental improv exploration. So from your perch, begin to cultivate imagery around earth. Earth is our first element we'll be exploring within the body. So as you start to cultivate images of earth, notice how the weight shifts within the body. Do you want to widen your stance, either seated or sitting? Thinking of the ways in which roots move through earth, the slow process of rocks moving, of plates shifting. What is the energetic quality of earth? And how can we translate that in the body? So think about your levels. Are you moving lower? Are you moving higher? Are your arms and legs closer in your personal kinesphere, in your personal space, or are they further away? Are your movements quick or sustained? And begin to let those movements grow. And remember, they may not be as expressive or interpretive as I'm producing in this video. You may just feel this in your gaze, in your breath, just within your arms or your fingers or your hands. But we all have experience with earth on some level, even if that's the action of physically digging in a garden. What are those efforts? Are we pressing? Are we pushing? And if you're at a loss, come back to the connections in the body. How does earth translate in the way we position our tail to heel, or our head to tail, or our scapula to arms? Start to let those movements associated with earth slow. Maybe they grow smaller. Maybe just start to transition to a slow, neutral walk, or a slower movement, or a smaller movement seated. And then come back to your perch. Let earth release from the body. Come back to you right now. Find that perch. If it's your breath, find the breath. If it's the sound of a bird, find that bird. And then begin to bring the energetic quality of air into the body. So thinking of our images of air. Air can mean storms. Air can mean sky, cloud, wind. Air can mean breath. Shifting from earth with air, what levels are you moving within? Do you find yourself reaching higher? Do you find your appendages reaching the outermost edges of the kinesphere? What parts of the body are initiating this idea of air? And again, what is the speed you're moving with air? Maybe you're seeing wind rustle leaves in a tree. Maybe you're feeling the wind on your skin. Maybe just by moving through these elements, you're starting to feel the breath kick up. Use that as inspiration. I tend to go into ballet world with air, feeling it light. My efforts are more float, glide. Where is your gaze when you think of air? And then start to let those movements slow down. Once again, making those movements smaller. Be that seated or standing. If you're standing, maybe you're coming to a nice air-like walk, into a neutral walk. And begin to notice the difference in those two efforts of walking on air or walking neutral. And then transition back to the perch. Take a moment, catch your breath, tune into the heartbeat. Imagine yourself on that perch. And then when you're ready, we'll transition the awareness to the element water. Water can mean lakes, rivers, creeks, waterfalls,
oceans, underwater. Water can mean rain, puddles, sprinklers, an open fire hydrant. How are you beginning to feel water come through the body? We are made up of a lot of water. The human body houses so much water. Tune in. And again, what levels, low, medium, high, are you moving within? Even if you're seated, you can delineate those 3 levels as you're seated. Are your movements sustained? Are they quick? Are they heavy? Are they light? What are those efforts? And I find water to be the most versatile in terms of efforts. You have the slash of heavy storms, but you have the float of a lazy river. What aspect of water resonates with you? Tune into those connections within the body. Notice which part of the body are primarily initiating movements associated with water. For me, I feel it a lot in my torso. And one thing water is known for is that it moves around obstacles with ease. It is very hard to stop the flow of water. Can you translate that within the body, letting one movement lead into the next, into the next, into the next, moving past the thinking brain? And maybe that moves you into a water-like walk. And then maybe we transition to a neutral walk or a more neutral swaying in our seat. Let the idea of water go from the body and come back to the perch. Rest at your perch. And finally, we'll call upon the element fire. Fire can be a bonfire, a wildfire, a stove. Fire can be both destructive and restorative. What are the shapes that you see fire make? What are the energies and efforts from fire? Even the difference between embers and big fires with big flames. Where does the movement initiate from? What is the weight of your body? How much space do you take up with your movements? Are you feeling a sharp, slashing, punching effort of fire? What is the speed in which you're moving for fire? I tend to quicken. My movements tend to be sharp, quick, slash. My hands make shapes. I might even make noise. Can you make a noise with the part of your body that translates fire? And maybe like you're walking on hot coals, you start to imagine that feeling in the feet, that energy, that weight of the body. Start to transition from this idea of fire, big raging fire, to embers, coals, a dying fire. Maybe notice the heat you cultivated within the body from this exercise. Stoke the internal fire. And then begin to transition to a neutral walk. Either find a standing or a seated position, or lie down on the ground. Close the eyes if that feels safe, or find a gaze point that you can just let the eyes rest. And just take a moment to review any discoveries, areas of tension or curiosity that you uncovered through translating the elements with the body. Just like a painter paints a landscape, if we can just take the time to slow down, to tune in, the environment is constantly giving us inspiration, and our bodies are constantly within communication. So I'd invite you the next time you're in a natural space, a city park, a backyard, or a national park. Notice what the body wants to do and deliver it that satisfaction. Thank you so much. Happy solstice.